Good to see something's alive. Signs of hope. Small, but there. This past summer, September 2024, a marine heat wave started to emerge along the South Australian coastline, and we had very calm seas, and it just created perfect conditions for this harmful algal bloom to really flourish in the stratified, warm coastal waters. And it's taken everyone by surprise. It's been absolutely shocking to witness the death of marine animals washing ashore all across the South Australian coastline. Log bed. Okay. Always a good sign when you find these. Alright, ready? Check? Yeah, let's do it. Yeah. While the algal bloom is still occurring, it's just so important that we get eyes underwater. So that's what I've been doing over the past few months, is going out and snorkeling or diving on sites so I can understand what remains and potentially what's been lost through this bloom. I'm particularly interested in the sea floor habitats formed by shellfish, not just oysters, but also native mussels and razorfish, which are large pen shells that form vast habitats on the sea floor. Sadly, it's almost 100% mortality for the razorfish at every site I've visited. It's quite devastating. But I do see signs of life on them as well, signs of hope. To my great relief, one of the things I have seen is that the oysters are getting fat, and it appears that they're filtering and feeding on the algae quite effectively. There's a lot of dead marine life around them, but they are still able to persist through these really dense algal concentrations. So that's a little bit of hope in what is otherwise a really horrendous situation.
One of the reasons why the marine environment is so vulnerable to climate change is the loss of habitats such as oyster reefs. The Europeans arrived, and by the late 1800s, the oyster reefs had been decimated and largely lost. They would go out on sailboats and drag these sort of chain link nets behind the sailboats, drag up the substrate, put them on the boat. They'd extract the lime, and they use that lime to build a lot of the old buildings that are now standing in Melbourne, Perth, Sydney and many other places.
It's estimated that about 99% of oyster reefs were destroyed here.
There's worldwide attention around the threats and the pressures and the potential loss of the Great Barrier Reef. But a lot of people don't realise, in terms of the Great Southern Reef, we've lost 1,500 kilometres of oyster reefs. Oyster reefs are incredibly efficient water filters. One oyster can filter around a bathtub of water today. So if you imagine millions of those oysters filtering water, reducing the impacts of harmful algal blooms, cleaning up the water, facilitating the growth of seagrass and other habitat. Per hectare per year, an oyster reef can contribute 6,000 kilos of new fish to the ecosystem as well.
So what we're doing with the Coastal Restoration Project is we're bringing back that lost habitat and all of the values that they would have once had in the ocean environments. When we first started building shellfish reefs over a decade ago, nobody had done it before. So it was a real pioneering effort, a path that nobody had trodden before. It was a real collaborative project that involved the community, the traditional owners, the scientists, the fishermen, the diving community.
Originally, we formed a partnership with the Victorian Fisheries Authority and the University of Melbourne to look at exporting the knowledge and know-how and science from the US and tailoring it to Australian conditions, specifically temperate conditions in Port Phillip Bay. It's a marine construction project, so there's a barge, there's a long-reach excavator. Parallel to that as well, there's reef design, looking at how do you optimise that reef design ecologically to enhance the oyster survival, enhance the colonisation and attraction of other species, and also how do you build these reefs so you don't impact upon coastal processes, you don't sort of mess up sand flows, etc. There's not many wild oysters left in the bay. The first step is that you need broodstock, so you need sort of adult oysters that are kind of ready to spawn.
We don't have enough shells here. In South Australia, we have a real thriving oyster industry. So a lot of our shell has come from directly off of the farm, and they come off the farm, we treat them, and then they go into a hatchery, and at the hatchery, the juvenile oysters will settle onto the shell.
And then they're transported out to a reef site and spread over that reef base, like, I guess, sprinkling icing on a cake. So what we're really doing is sort of kick-starting that recovery process. We want to get that reef substrate out there at the time of the year when there's wild, natural spawning.
It's astonishing to see when nature's given a chance to come back naturally, it can. But it's hard with oyster reefs because we've lost that hard substrate. Reintroducing shell substrate into areas where oysters can recruit, that's one of the key things that we need to do to restore a reef, because they can't come back unless they have some hard anchor point to attach themselves to. So we need solutions to put that back in the water.
The Shuck Don't Chuck project was started in 2014. It has been incredibly successful. It's a really engaging, practical and meaningful way to involve the hospitality sector, markets such as South Melbourne markets in restoring reefs.
What people don't realise is that can have important habitat value for our marine environment. And so under the right conditions, where it's solar treated and kept for a period of time, we're then able to recycle and reuse those shells to provide new habitat for fish along our coasts.
I was doing the calculations the other day, and I think that since 2014 we've recycled like 150,000 wheelbarrows of shells. So that's a lot of shells.
Such a great project because it really gets people to stop and think while they're eating that oyster about where it comes from, what its habitat's like, and what value it might be able to put back into the marine environment. We're looking at inbreeding within and between populations of Angazi oysters, but we're also trying to understand if some populations of Angazi oysters are able to survive in shallower waters better than others, so we can try and increase that restoration footprint in the future. This can benefit the Reef Builder project, as we would be able to take these oysters and actually breed them ourselves and try and make some new genetic lines that we can target for restoring in shallower water areas.
As we stand today, we've restored sort of 62 hectares of reefs at 21 reef locations around Australia, which is quite an incredible achievement. So it is challenging, but it's also incredibly satisfying. But I think it's most satisfying is that we're giving back to nature and people.
What we'd expect to see before we started these projects is that recovery would take anywhere from 7 to 30 years for a reef to return back to a natural looking reef. But some of those reefs are already exceeding those expectations. The reefs themselves require very little maintenance once they have been built.
And I've been able to quantify that just 1 hectare of restored reef, after about a year and a half following restoration, it can be clearing about 6 million litres of water a day. So when you're restoring reefs that are going down for the long term in perpetuity, that's a renewable resource and way of sustainably cleaning the water column through nature-based solution.
The land, sea, water and sky country is extremely important to Wadawurrung people, as it's sustained generations of Wadawurrung people throughout 65,000 years that our people have been on this land and country. Oysters are extremely significant to the Wadawurrung people as they fed Wadawurrung people for generations. So projects like this are absolutely vital to restore the bay to what it once was, and hopefully we'll get there. It's going to take a lot of time.
We're working on country that they've cared for thousands of years. So engaging with them closely from the start around what species are going on the reefs, where the reefs are going to be sited, having them involved in the governance of the project, providing sort of regular updates. Ultimately, having their involvement and their support is fundamental to everything that we do. We acknowledge the traditional owners of the country, their connection for thousands of years, their stewardship, and we are working with them to help repair the damage that's happened over the last 200 plus years. What's next for Reef Builder and reef restoration in Australia is really targeting those areas where large expanses of reefs can be restored. So there's a lot of work to do. So up to 2030 and beyond, we're really looking at restoring sort of hundreds, if not thousands of hectares of reefs, but it's going to take a team effort.
My hope for the future is that projects like these keep on continuing and that Wadawurrung are at the forefront of these projects. I think it's extremely important, not only for Wadawurrung people, but for the broader Victorian community, that our sea country is as healthy as possible.
The cost of inaction is far greater than the cost of action. And we're talking about infrastructure that doesn't need to be renewed every 5 years. If you look at the cost of a road or a footpath, they're far more expensive than building an oyster reef, which is put down for decades, generations to enjoy, and hopefully, can really sort of start to turn the tide on the biodiversity challenges we have in our marine environment.
Seeing the impacts of the algal bloom here and the crisis that the marine environment is facing. I know that the ocean's sick. I also know that nature has an incredible ability to recover and repair itself. We just got to give the ocean the opportunity and that kickstart to enable it to do that. And I think that coastal restoration and this project is a really important part of helping the marine environment to repair and recover. It's a project of hope. I want people to know that we can't give up, we can repair, we can heal the ocean, and we can do that through projects like this one.